This is Chris Carley, Chairman of the Concord Zoning Board of Adjustment. Welcome to the June meeting of the board. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, we will be conducting our meeting electronically rather than in person, as authorized by Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. The Governor's emergency order waives the usual legal requirement for physical location at which the public can observe and listen contemporaneously to ZBA meetings. However, in accordance with the emergency order, the city is taking the following steps to provide for public participation in and access to the proceedings as fully as possible. We are required to provide public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We're using the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following number: area code 929-205-6099. That's area code 929-205-6099. And the password for the webinar ID number is 610-919-318. That is 610-919-318, or by clicking on the following website address: us02.zoom.us/j/610919318. In case you didn't memorize that, I'll read it again. That is us02.web.zoom.us/j/6109-19318. We are also required to provide public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. The city has given notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and you can find detailed instructions on how to participate on the City of Concord's website at Concord, New Hampshire. That's concordnh, one word, .gov/280/zoning-board-of-adjustment. We are required to provide a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-856-3913 or email at code, CODE, at Concord, New Hampshire, all one word, .gov. In the event that any member of the public is unable to access the meeting concerning a case or cases in which they have interest, please call 603-856-3913 or email code@concordnh.gov as soon as possible. We will adjourn the hearing and reschedule it for another time that will allow all to participate. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. We'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Mr. Wallner.
Nicholas Wallner, and I'm all alone.
Ms. Spector-Morgan.
Laura Spector-Morgan, and I am all alone.
Ms. Scott.
Laura Scott, and I'm alone right now in my office.
And Mr. Monahan.
James Monahan, and I'm here alone at my home office.
And I am also alone in my home office. We will be following the agenda in the order in which the cases appear. We will follow our usual procedure, which is to say we will ask the appellant to come forward, be sworn in, and offer us any testimony that he or she would like us to hear in favor of their appeal. Following that, we will ask the appellant to step aside. In this case, that means simply stopping talking, I guess. And we will solicit testimony from anyone who is in favor of the appeal and subsequently anyone who is in opposition to the appeal. Following that, I will check in with code enforcement to see if there are any comments from the code enforcement office. And following all of that, if there has been any testimony offered that appears to justify factual clarification, the appellant will have the opportunity to offer that clarification prior to our closing the public testimony portion of the hearing. Our first case, we do ask that the appellants confine their testimony, if at all possible, to 10 minutes, and that those who wish to speak from the floor confine their testimony to 5 minutes. Our first case this evening is case 24-20, Charles Eastwood. The applicant wishes to replace an existing carport with an enclosed garage, expand the existing dwelling, and requests the following: a variance from Article 28.4.1H, Table of Dimensional Regulations, to allow a 5-foot setback from the southerly side property line where a 15-foot side setback is required, and variance from Article 28.3.3 Shoreland Protection District to allow a structure to be placed no less than 50 feet from the reference line of Bow Brook where a 75-foot no disturbance overlay zone is required. This would all be for property located at 19 Brookside Drive in an RS residential single-family district. Is Mr. Eastwood with us or someone representing him? It looks like you're muted, Mr. Eastwood.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. This is my first time being at a meeting such as this. I apologize for any lack of coordination with it.
Well, no apology necessary. We'll make enough mistakes for everybody.
Thank you.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Please let us know what you would like us to hear.
Okay. The variances that I'm requesting are as you stated. My reasonings for this is the house, carport, and patio of 19 Brookside Drive, where I live, were built in the 1950s. Since that time, utility easements, wetland buffers, and shoreline protection districts have been enacted, which cut through significant portions of the existing structures, rendering all structures currently on the property in violation of zoning restrictions. Given the age and condition of the existing structures of 19 Brookside Drive, repair and remediation work is necessary to ensure continued safe use of the property. The combined setbacks and shoreline protection zone in effect on the property do not allow our house, already the second smallest in the neighborhood, to exist on the lot. Granting these variants would allow us to replace the aging carport with a 1 to 2 car garage and to create additional living space in our property. The authorization of these variances is reasonable because it would result in substantial justice, defining our neighborhood as the closed loop created by Sunset Drive, Jordan Avenue, and Brookside Drive. And I'm thanking whoever is putting up these diagrams. The improvements we intend to make will, 1, allow us to have a dwelling of comparable size to those in our neighborhood. Our house is already the second smallest here, and it is almost 500 square feet smaller than the average house in our neighborhood. The variances we are requesting will allow us to create additional finished living space similar to the amount of living space enjoyed by our neighbors. It will also allow us to have a dwelling of comparable value to those of our neighborhood. Home value being closely tied to finished living space, our house is valued approximately $40,000 less than the average house in our neighborhood. This is due to both discrepancies in size and lack of amenities such as a garage. The variances we are requesting will allow us to improve our home to a value similar to that enjoyed by our neighbors. It will also allow us to enjoy amenities similar to those of our neighbors. All other houses in this neighborhood have garages, and ours is the only home without. Most of the homes in the neighborhood have garage space for more than one automobile. In our subsegment of the neighborhood, Brookside Drive specifically, most houses have 2-car garages. The variances we are requesting will allow us to replace our existing decades-old carport with a 1 to 2-car garage similar to that enjoyed by our neighbors. We also would be allowed to enjoy security similar to that of our neighbors, ours being the only house in the neighborhood without enclosed securable space to store personal property. At the present time, our house has an open overhang in the back and an open carport, which was where yard maintenance equipment and cars are stored. Aside from providing minimal protection from the elements, these structures provide no ability to secure our personal property. Over the past several years, there's been an increase in thefts reported in the south end of Concord, and we ourselves have had several items taken from under our storage area and our cars, which we leave unlocked to avoid the cost of replacing broken windows. Unlike our neighbors who can secure expensive items such as snow blowers, we have no ability to do so. This results in both the nuisance and cost of having to replace stolen or prematurely weather-worn items, and the substantial difficulty that comes from not being able to own items that facilitate the maintenance of our property. The variances we are requesting would allow us to create enclosed, securable space for personal property similar to that enjoyed by our neighbors. It would also allow us to make use of our property lot to a degree similar to that available to our neighbors. Our neighborhood is made up of 25 houses on lots of varying sizes and shapes. Review of publicly available records and simply walking through the neighborhood makes clear that many buildings in our neighborhood sit very close to property lines, and our proposed garage and addition will not increase the building lot size ratio visible from the street, which is well within the norm for our neighborhood. The variances we are requesting will allow us to make use of our property to a degree similar to that enjoyed by our neighbors. And all of these claims are supported by the figures and tables that I submitted with the variance application, and I hope will be enlightened. Granting the variances will not have a negative impact on our neighborhood for the following reasons. From the perspective of the street, the improvements we intend to make will occupy the same amount of visual space as structures currently in existence since the 1950s. The distance between buildings on the properties at 19 and 21 Brookside Drive, the adjacent property to the south, will remain unchanged and is already greater than the norm of the distance between buildings and property lines in our neighborhood. Due to the strip of woodland between our property and 21 Brookside Drive and the wooded Bow Brook area behind our property, the majority of our proposed construction will not impact the visual experience of our neighbors or the public. The ability to store personal property and yard or home maintenance equipment out of sight will improve the visual appearance of our yard and the aesthetic experience of our neighbors. Increasing the livable and usable space as well as improving the visual appearance of our house and yard will increase both the value of our property and the property of the values around us. The wetland buffer and natural vegetation or natural wooded wetland barrier at the back of the house there, you can see the tree line. We will not come into that. We will not impact that wetland barrier. And again, all of this is detailed in the figures and tables that I included with my application for variance adjustment. And in the interest of time and brevity, I hope that covers things succinctly.
All right, could you put up a plan that shows the addition?
So that would be probably figure 4, Mr. Walker. So that is as currently the house sits on the property as is right now.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So you have, I assume, upper left is the garage.
Yes, sir. Where the arrow is right now.
And what do we have behind it?
We're hoping to create both a finished living space and also a screen porch where the arrow just was just then.
I see. Questions from the board? Nick, any questions?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Laura Scott, any questions?
No questions.
Yeah, maybe Craig can help me figure this out. I'm trying to get a better understanding of the setback relative to Bow Brook.
Well, there's 2 setbacks here that come into play. First is the 75-foot shoreland protection district, and that's this broader one here that actually comes through the existing structure. And then you have a 50-foot wetland buffer from the edge of the wetlands. So the shoreland protection is measured from the edge of the brook, but then I believe there's some wetlands beyond the edge of the brook, and that's covered with the 50-foot wetland buffer, which is here. So their porch addition does not look like it's going to encroach on the wetland buffer, but it will be encroaching on the shoreland protection district. And then you have the standard side yard setback, which is this line right here, building setback, that would come up on the left side of the diagram here. There's also a utility easement for drainage that runs down what would be the south side of the property, and that's been taken into consideration for protection and not disturbing.
So,
Chairman?
If I'm reading it right, then the house is already in the shoreline protection setback.
Yeah, the house would have been constructed long before the adoption of the shoreline protection district.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Morgan, did you have any questions?
I have two questions. My first question is, when did the Eastwoods purchase the property?
We purchased it about 3 to 4 years ago now.
And it's currently about 2,000 square feet of
Yeah.
living space?
Currently 1,200 square feet of living space.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
This is Laura Scott. I do have a question. So you're currently going to the proposal is to take the carport and make it into an enclosed garage, and then you're going to add living space and add a screen porch. Those are not there currently, correct?
That is correct. Replacing the carport with a garage, as shown right now in Figure 5, and ideally adding living space and a screen porch behind.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Eastwood, is there anything else you'd like us to know?
I think that's everything. Is there further questions for me?
It doesn't look as if there are, so thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for your time.
And now, is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? I see one party there that I believe does want to testify. They're muted.
This is Paul DeLaire. I sent in an email
Yes.
that was told
Good
would
evening,
be read.
Mr. Can I swear you in? Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
What would you like us to know?
Oh, I did not make a copy of my email.
Well, that's okay. I've got one.
Thank you.
Which I carefully filed. Here somewhere.
I got it.
You got it, Craig. I know I have it here. This is the kind of mistake. There we go. I can't even blame on the computer.
Would you like me to read it, or can you read it, see it?
I found it. Thank you.
Okay.
With your permission, Mr. DeLaire, I'll read the email.
Yes, sir.
Charles Eastwood's house at 19 Brookside Drive is next to my house at 17 Brookside Drive. For years, the house was empty and slowly disintegrating due to lack of care. Water and electricity were shut off and taxes went unpaid. I became increasingly concerned the building would become a crack house. There were several attempts to purchase the house, but to no avail due to the former's reluctance on several issues. The new owners have completely renovated both the inside and outside at great expense. The house now looks charming and well kept. A garage would align the house with other homes in Brookfield Drive and the neighborhood in addition to enhancing the home's value. I therefore endorse the variances requested by Charles Eastwood. And it is signed Paul DeLaire, 17 Brookside Drive, Concord. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Gould?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor of the appeal? Is there anyone who would like to be heard in opposition? Any comments from code enforcement?
No, I don't think I have anything else to add at this point.
All right, with that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request for variances to put an addition, a garage, and some living space on a house. We heard testimony that the lot is that the house is grandfathered in, that the lot is quite small, and that virtually no improvements could be made on the house or expansion without violating the setbacks. What do you think, Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly think that there's a lot of merit to this request. I think carports are not a characteristic of that neighborhood, and certainly a garage would fit in with the fact that reasonable use of the property should include a garage. It looks like most of those properties have setback issues already. And I think when I look at the overhead map, I see that the wetland buffer certainly is substantial in the applicant's background compared to all the other neighborhoods. So I think the hardship argument is persuasive enough that I would tend to approve this request.
Laura Spector-Morgan, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't have any concern about the garage request. That does seem reasonable, particularly where the carport's already there and sort of enclosing it in. I am more concerned about the living space and the screened porch, and particularly the screened porch, which is entirely within that 75-foot setback. So I think it's a small house. I would be inclined to approve the variances for the garage and the additional living space, but not the screened porch. I just don't think that's a reasonable use.
I think correct me if I'm wrong on this, Craig, but I think we have to take it as it's presented. In other words, we can't redesign it as part of our approval.
I would have to agree with that because we don't know exactly where delineation is, and by eliminating that, they may want to redesign or reconsider too. So.
Okay. Then I guess I need to think about it some more.
Very good. Laura Scott.
I have no problem with the garage portion and the 5-foot setback from the side. I think it's reasonable because it's an existing carport. Making it into a garage makes sense. The reason I had asked about whether there was anything in the current living space area or screened porch area was I was hoping maybe there was a deck or there was something else there, and it could be considered the same way that the carport could be, where it was more of a enhancement. We were bringing it up to more current standards. I do have a concern about putting new structures in the shoreland protection district. I'm sympathetic to the fact that most of the property is in the shoreland protection district and the wetland buffer, but it was that way when Mr. Eastwood bought the property. So I'm not sure what the hardship is because nothing changed on the property from when he bought it. But again, I know it is a tough site looking at it. I know he's respecting the wetland buffer, and that shoreland buffer, looking at the topography of that property. I don't think the shore is ever going to make it that far up, or the arc is going to be coming down with it if there's that much water that's moving up. But I have a hard time wanting to grant variances from environmental ordinances. So I am torn on this. I have no problem with the 5-foot setback for the carport, but I do have concern about building in the shoreland protection district when there's currently nothing there.
Jim.
I tend to agree with Nick. I think the house is somewhat of a victim of changes that came along after it was built, and I think it'd be very challenging to improve the value of the property and thus the rest of the neighborhood without making some sort of accommodations to the shoreline setback. And a screen porch seems to be less intrusive than a more substantial structure on the property. So I'm inclined to support both variances.
I agree with Jim and Nick. I think that because this particular property was overtaken by events, and I think it's certainly a reasonable use for a residence to put a screen porch behind it, particularly near a stream like that where screen porches are mighty handy. I do not see a problem with the environmental aspect of it, given the distance to the brook and the size of the watercourse there, as Laura suggested, by the time the water gets up there, we've got other problems besides
Right.
screen porches. Very good. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll
Is there-
second.
It's been moved and seconded. Rose, did you get the people on that? We got no Rose, so
No, I got it. I got
okay.
it.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I guess I was hoping we might be able to separate the two variances. Because again, I am inclined to vote for the side setback, but not for the shoreland.
Well, I think
But
actually,
that's up to you guys. You guys made the motion.
I am on the same page as Laura Scott.
it's not an unreasonable request.
I'll retract my motion if you want, and I'll move approval on item the first variance.
Jim?
Yes, I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Just so I'm clear, the first variance is the side setback?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we're done with discussion on the first motion, which is for variance number 1. All in favor?
You have to do the roll call.
Oh, I am sorry. Mr. Wallner,
Aye.
Ms. Spector Morgan,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Monahan,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. The motion carries, the variance passes. Do we have a motion on variance number 2?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just want to add that if you're familiar with that area, there's quite a drop off to that brook behind all those properties on Sunset and all the way down to Rockingham Street.
Very good.
I just wanted to say that, again, I am sympathetic to the property owner. But he did buy the property knowing that that restriction was there. And it's not just the screen porch that's going to be in the shoreland district. It's also the living space is proposed to be in that area as well. And so, again, I try to respect the environmental protections we have in place. They're there for a reason. So I will be voting against this, but I do understand the plight of the property owner.
Thank you. I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Mr. Wallner,
Aye.
Ms. Spector Morgan,
Nay.
Ms. Scott,
Nay.
Mr. Monahan,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. The vote is 3-2, and the motion carries, and the variance is granted. And that brings us to our second case this evening, and I may want to have, I think we'll want to have Craig say a few words. I'll read off the agenda item. It's 2520 Snedeker Properties, LLC. The applicant requests a variance to Article 2841H, the Table of Conventional Regulations, to allow a total lot coverage of 86%, where a maximum lot coverage of 50% is allowed, for property located at 75 Allison Street in an RN residential neighborhood district. The requested lot coverage relief is in addition to the relief granted by the ZBA for case 0720 on March 4th, 2020. Greg, can you fill us in a little bit on how this comes before us again?
Yes, after they brought forward their original request, it had some incorrect calculations relating to lot coverage. They went and had the property surveyed. It was apparent that there were errors made in the calculations. They've recalculated it, so they need to come back then and just fix that last item there, essentially, because it was did require a variance for the 86% lot coverage.
Thank you. Mr. Snedeker, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
I do.
Would you fill us in on your request?
Yes. Do you guys have the application in front of you? Should I read through the whole application?
No, I don't think that's necessary. We do have the application, and I don't know if all the board members heard the other case, but is there anyone here who didn't hear the other case?
I didn't.
The March
I
case?
may not have.
All right. Mr. Snedeker, why don't you run briefly through the the points of your application here.
All right. So basically, the points of the application is we're doing a conversion over at 75 Allison Street from a storefront retail space only to a much desired residential 3-bedroom dwelling unit, an apartment. We've gone ahead and added sprinkler system, upgrading everything with the property, appearance of the exterior, bringing up neighborhood property values. Neighbors that I've spoke with on my right-hand side from the property right there, that's Chris Graham, which he's attending with us tonight. He also put a letter in favor. That's the property that we are going to be paving up to, right on the right-hand side right there. So that's the pavement that we're paving. And then in front, that's the pavement that we're ripping up. So the architects that we had do the drawing, I don't know where the calculations came from, but I believe he was adding city pavement in the front right there in his calculations, which was incorrect. So when we had the property surveyed, it ended up being more pavement laid down than being taken up. So in order to coincide with the 5-space parking area with the 13-foot aisle variance that we had granted, then this is how the parking would need to be set up.
So the design is the same, the numbers change because you don't have quite as much property as you thought you did.
Correct, exactly.
Are there questions from the board? No?
No.
Okay. Everybody seems to be shaking his or her head, so we'll assume there are no questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Snedeker.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in favor of this appeal?
Yes, I'm Christopher Graham. I'm the neighbor to the north or west, I guess. I was trying to think that he was showing in the picture there where my house is directly adjacent to his. And I've discussed rearranging the driveway with Michael Snedeker, and everything seems fine to me. I mean, overall, I'm just thrilled that he's making better use of the building than it's been. I mean, I've lived here for 25 years and I've watched half a dozen retail operations come and go. It just doesn't seem to be a viable retail location. And the fact that he's changing it into residential apartments makes it just a more suitable building for our neighborhood. And I just want to say I'm in favor of it.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, you might want to swear him in.
Oh, I do apologize. You swear to tell the truth? You swear you just told the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I did.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Graham.
All right, you're welcome.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in favor of the appeal? Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition to it? With that, we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing. We've heard testimony that this is a case we granted a variance on earlier. We've heard testimony that there was a mathematical error made in the calculations for the lot coverage, and the appellant has come back and asked to amend the variance to correct the lot coverage. Mr. Monahan, how does it look to you?
It looks fine. I have no questions.
Ms. Scott?
It looks the same, and I still am glad I don't have to park in those spots because I wouldn't make it in or out with my parking skills. But I have no concerns or questions.
Ms. Spector-Morgan?
If it's just a math error that's being corrected, I don't have any questions, concerns, or issues.
Mr. Wallner?
Neither do I. We're only looking at a 9% increase from the original application.
Very good. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we approve the variance.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? No, wait a minute, I can't do that. Mr. Monahan,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Ms. Spector Morgan,
Aye.
Mr. Wallner,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Motion carries. The variance is granted, or in this case, re-granted. And I believe that concludes our agenda this evening. Is there any further business before us? I beg your pardon? Oops. Is there any further business before us, Rose or Craig?
The minutes, please.
Not that I have.
Minutes. Would anyone care to,
Move to approve last month's minutes.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm not going to poll everybody on the minutes.
That's okay. I'll forgive you.
Okay. Aye. Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.
Anything else?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure flying with you.
Have a great night,
Have
everyone.
a good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone. Good night.
Aye.
We'll see you
Thank
again
you.
next month.